Well, it sounds like something out of a blockbuster thriller movie. Imagine unfamiliar men showing up to your place of residence, maybe even your bedroom, forcibly removing you from your home, putting you on a plane without an explanation, very few words even exchanged at all. Before you know it, you end up in a sort of camp some thousands of miles away that's supposed to help you recover from things like struggles with mental illness or behavioral problems. Well, this has actually happened to hundreds of thousands of American teenagers. These wilderness therapy camps, as they're called, are designed to help shock them out of bad habits, addictions, and some, quote, make them good again. Well, filmmaker Liza Williams produced a documentary on these establishments. She joins us on the program now for Perspective. Liza, thank you very much for joining us today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So what sparked your interest in these camps?
I think our production company, our executive producer, Bruce Fletcher, spotted a news article in The Guardian, and it was a first-person piece from a woman called Nadine, who actually ended up in the film. And she described her experience on these camps. And we started researching the wider story, really, and we're quite shocked as to how big a thing it was. In Britain, we don't have a troubled teen industry. That's what they call it in America. And so we realised the wider story, and that's how it started, really.
You mentioned that it's kind of referred to as a troubled teen industry. What does that imply? Why is there so much demand, and what does it look like on top of these camps?
So the film explores the origins of this industry, basically, in the 80s. And I think it was a particular time where parents were really concerned about their children. You know, there was issues with drugs that were coming to the fore. It was the Nancy Reagan era, just say no. And I think there was a lot of paranoia about teenagers' behaviour. So I think that people were able to market these camps, and there was a real fear within, a lot of parents that their children were on the wrong path. And I think that's how it all began.
So the purpose, of course, being to supposedly set them right again, if you will. What kind of activities are teenagers at these camps supposed to participate in? And is it based on any kind of academic research showing that these activities work?
I think it's quite loose, and I think that the camps that are in the film, a long time ago, they sort of range from the 80s to the 2000s. And I think that, that there's some level of research that getting kids in the outdoors, doing activities together in groups, exploring the landscape of America, is therapeutic. But I think that it has to be done in the right way, and it has to be monitored in the right way. And that's obviously where troubles began, really, and where kids came into trouble.
And as far as the activities go, can you kind of take our readers through what an average day in these camps looked like?
So the people that we spoke to, a lot of them went to a camp in Utah. They were marched around the desert for hours on end. They didn't get much food. They had very, very strict rations on water. The temperatures were either very high or very low, the extreme temperatures in the mountains of Utah, very harsh terrain, no comforts that you would get at home, no toilets and things like that. But I think it was more the length of time as well. They were out there for a long, long time, weeks on end, without no contact at all with their parents, which I think is one of the big things. Psychologically, I think that was very, very tough for the kids.
And these are things, nonetheless, that, of course, parents have to obviously validate and consent to in order for their children to be sent there.
Yeah, so in the camps that we featured, the parents actually signed away their parental rights to the people running the camps. So the people running the camps effectively, were responsible for them, which was quite shocking when we realised that was how far it went.
What legitimacy do the people running these camps have to prescribe these so-called treatments? What kind of profiles do they have? Are they religious leaders? Are they therapists? Is there any reason to believe, again, that the kind of activities that they're proposing would work?
It's very, like I said, it's very loose. And the camps that we featured, in some of them there were therapists there, but they weren't necessarily on hand all the time. And I think that it was often sold as a therapy camp. But then actually, when you got underneath it, there was very little therapy at all, really. The main guy we featured, Steve Cartesano, who started these camps, he had a military background, so he did understand, those elements of being in the outdoors and survival, but not so much the other side of things, I don't think.
I guess one of the major questions that comes to mind is how is this legal? I imagine in many countries, probably France included, this would simply, be considered kidnapping in a sense. How is it possible that it doesn't run into any legal issues?
I think that the regulations are quite confusing, and we didn't get into the regulations now because the camps that we feature are historic. But I think that it's quite a confused picture across America because America's so big. There's different rules in different states, and I think it's quite easy to operate in one state that you might not be able to operate in another. And I think also it was the parents' choice. The parents chose to send these children, and they chose to have their children kidnapped. So ultimately, I think that is how it can happen because it's their choice. Often we found that it was almost prescribed. A lot of insurance companies paid for this as if it was treatment, sort of medical insurance companies. So it was seen as quite an official thing at one time, definitely.
As a final question for you, Liza, your movie covers kids, as you said earlier, who attended these camps in the late 1980s to the early 2000s. But what about now? I understand that they do still exist. There are still hundreds of thousands of teenagers that are being forced to go to them. So have they changed at all since information has come out, sometimes about the lack of efficiency in these camps and even some of the horrible conditions, physical, even sexual abuse that's been unveiled?
Yeah, I mean, thousands of children, there's still a thriving troubled teen industry in America. It's probably bigger than ever. And thousands of children go to camps and schools. It's a broad picture of the types of places that fall under this umbrella. But I think there is probably more regulation now. But I think that, recent stories have proved that isn't really, stopping things happening. I mean, Paris Hilton is a famous example. She's talked about the abuse she suffered. Going to a sort of a school that was similar ethos to these camps. So yeah, it's still going today, and it probably needs looking at.
Liza Williams, director of Hell Camp: Teen Nightmare, the documentary that is available on the Netflix streaming platform. Thank you very much for joining us on Perspective today.
Thanks so much. Thank you.